Hello and welcome to 100 Yards of Football Sports Talk. I'm your host for tonight's show, Coach Kevin Bull Jones. And tonight on our high school segment, we're going to go down a fascinating history of vintage football here in Georgia. And it's going to be great because I have one of my former coaches, a guy that I want to talk about and all the things that he helped us in our early years, and then he took it on and moved on to other greener pastures and had a fascinating career. So if you like the show, please share and join. My host for today is legendary Parkview head coach, Coach Cecil Flowe. How you doing, Coach?
I'm great. How are you, Kevin?
I tell you what, I am doing great in the midst of all of this high school coaching of football in the COVID time, something that both, of course, you and I probably never thought we'd see anything like this, but it's been a journey. So I can't complain, but I do admire how after 44 years of coaching, you're still rocking and rolling with it. 197 wins, 67 losses, only 67 losses, 4 state titles, back to back to back years. I was on the coaching end of some of that when we had to face you when I was at Reed, but when it all started. But how do you do it? What helps you to get up early in the morning and after so much fantastic history of coaching in Georgia, and unprecedented times of going 3 years without a loss, 3 state titles, 4 total. How do you do it?
It's still just the drive of the game. I mean, I love to compete and I love to work with kids and still teach them the game. After the 33 plus years, I retired for about 4 days and I was bored to death. And Pete Everett, who played for me back in 94, 95 at Parkview, he called me and asked me if I knew Jeff Pickard at Kings Ridge. Okay. And I didn't even know where Kings Ridge was, but it was just about 6 miles from my house. And I went down and interviewed and worked with him for 2 or 3 years. And then Coach Kraft was coming up to North Gwinnett or to North Forsyth. Right. And I actually interviewed Coach Kraft in 2006 at Parkview, and I couldn't get him hired, like I told you. And they hired a basketball coach, and that's all good. But he went down to be with Rush at Colquitt, and then he went right back down to North Florida where he was a student. And they won the state championship there. And I started seeing Coach Kraft at all of Georgia Southern's home games where my son Patrick played. Right. And I finally ran into him, and I said, "What are you here at all these games for?" And he said, "Well, my quarterback's playing free safety. It's Patrick's roommate." Okay. And so all that being said, he said he was coming up here to get this job. And, I said, "Hey, you need some help?" And he said, "Sure, let's go." So, I came up, and this is our 5th year together. And we've just about got the corner turned. He's still some things. It's not the, the kids are tremendous. I mean, they work hard. Kids in all facets now, going through COVID and going through all this stuff we're going through and all of the quarantines, and there's an uptick now in Forsyth County, especially at like Lambert High School, and we've had a few here, and so everybody's on pins and needles just like you are, because you never know. Golly, I mean, do I have my kids or don't I have my kids? And we've been fortunate. We had most of our kids that went online, for the first semester just to keep them out of the building. We bring them in early for weight training, but otherwise we're sort of self-quarantined. But, to answer your question, I still love it. I would be bored completely just out of my mind sitting around doing nothing. And so the 4:30 get-ups to be here at 6 o'clock sometimes, that's a little bit a long day, but hey, I still enjoy it and have a great time and have fun with the kids, and it's still fun.
Right. Well, I tell you what, Coach, I can only hope to go at it as long as you have, and that's just amazing. For those many years, to work in this arena of football, knowing how things change so much. I know for us here in North Atlanta, we didn't start a season on time because we had one person COVID hit that shut us down. And it was crazy. I think my wife was going to put me out the house because I was in the way.
Oh yeah.
And, we couldn't go to the school. We had to stay away from the campus. And And my wife just politely told me that, you're really not around this time of the year, and you're really in the way.
That's right.
And the funny part about it, Coach, is I just found out some things about how things work around my house when I'm not here. My dog has his own seat, which is my seat.
Right, right.
I didn't know that because when I'm here, he won't get in my seat. But it's just amazing how the world around you moves when you're not in our comfortable environment. And just the fact that we got a chance to play, I needed the relief because
Right.
of the virtual classes. And Coach, you and I share the same home of football as far as Redan High School, and it's just amazing, how we've transformed to this arena and everything that's going on in the world and everything that's going on with football and kids. And I just got in the way. And my wife said, you're going to probably have to get out of here and go drive somewhere. So,
Yeah, that's
you
right.
know, see, Coach, those are things you didn't teach us back in the day at Redan High School, but we never knew we would go through this.
That's
But
right.
I want to ask you about those days because you were part of a special time in my life, being a part of Redan High School before you went to Parkview High School. You and Coach Chuck Mize, and those were some great years.
Yeah.
And that Raider family that you were part of, and I remember you being a great part of the transition when Coach Shankweiler left and Coach Clore came in. We needed you guys there to help transition from the success that we had. And then when you came in, and Coach Barber and the rest of the coaches, the coach that stayed on the staff, you all really helped that transition. Talk about that a little bit, because those were your early years of coaching.
They were my very first years of coaching at a high school level, and George Carden, who was on that staff, and he and I were very good friends, and he said, look, you need to come up here, and let me back up just a second. When I graduated from high school, my dad worked for Chevrolet, and we had come from Charlotte to Atlanta in 1969.
Wow.
And then he was transferred up to Minneapolis, and
Okay.
we flew up there in March. I think it was March the 25th, and there was 6 feet of snow on the ground. And I said, I'm not staying up here. I'm going back to Georgia. And so I went back and actually finished my last year of high school, and then I actually had to get out in the workforce because I had to make money to provide for myself. And I was back coaching in the afternoons, at Redan, and Coach Carden said, "Look, you just need to start subbing here, and you can be here full time, and as you're finishing school." And so that's what I did. And Coach Shankweiler was really great to me. I mean, he welcomed me in, and we just put me to work. Just put me to work and let me do stuff. And you had Kevin on the show a couple of weeks ago, and
Yeah.
Kevin. Kevin taught me, the kicking game, and
Wow.
and he really did. I mean, I was a student of his, and at the same time, I mean, we video back in the day. We had the big giant video cameras, and
Right.
he said, "Videotape me. We got to watch this. I got to see what I'm doing." And he
Gotcha.
began to ask me things, and I began to learn. And he was just a great teacher, and I learned so much from Kevin that I was able to take to all my teams and to all of my kickers and repeat success and have good success with it. But from there, when Coach Shankweiler, we won the state, and then Coach Shank went to Walton, and then Coach Clore came in. It's like we were well rooted there, and there was a group of guys like y'all that were there. It's like, look, this is still really good. We're going to go forward, and they need a foundation. They don't need a complete coaching staff change. And so I'd asked Coach Mize, and I knew Coach Mize from Henderson High School because we umpired. And I umpired a lot of his games.
Yep.
And so I asked Coach Mize about coming over. I said, look, we need, number one, Coach Barber was actually leaving and going to North Campus, North DeKalb, to be the baseball coach. And so we needed a head wrestling coach and a defensive coordinator. And so I got him involved with Coach Clore, and we got the job. And so we just set out to go to work.
Right.
And Coach, there's Jerry. Jerry Hogan was still there.
Jerry Hogan, yes, Coach Hogan, yes.
And Coach Smart was still there, and
Right.
Some other people moved on, but we had a really good staff. And that lasted, 2 years. And Chuck said, let's go out and get us a team.
Yep.
And so we got a little, went to 0-80 Sequoia over in Doraville, and said, let's go build it. And so we went over there, and we took a little, just a small bedroom community of about 30 kids.
Right.
Worked them, and the first year we didn't have very much success. And the second year we were 5-4-1, and they gave us the key to the city. And it's like we won 5 games, but they hadn't won 5 games in 10 years. So the next year we were 8-2 and in the playoffs. And then we saw an opportunity to go to Stone Mountain, and just to go up a level. And Kenny Reese was there with us at Sequoia. He actually graduated from Sequoia, and he stayed there and had great success with the kids that we had built there.
Right.
And so Coach Mize and I went to Stone Mountain, and we stayed there for 5 years. And in 1989, Hugh Buchanan, the baseball coach at Parkview, asked us to, say, look, the job's open. And I took it for a year, but I'm the baseball coach. I can't do it all. So y'all come over. So Chuck interviewed, but at that time, it's like, I'm not sure you can bring anybody with you. And he said, well, I'm just not going to go if I can't take my 3 top guys with me.
Right.
So the very next year, Buck called me back, because I'd umpired a lot of ball games for Buck too. And he said, look, the coach is leaving. They're getting rid of him. They're going to clean the house. Y'all can bring the whole staff. You need to come on. Right. And by that time, we were ready. And we'd gone over there and saw that it was really a gold mine that just needed to be worked. And just like it was, every day. And so we went over and started to build. And, in the second year, everybody knows this now, in the second year, after that year, we were 2-8 the first year and 8-3 the second year.
Right.
And then the tragedy happened, with him getting killed. And I'd never been a head football coach. I'd been a head wrestling coach, assistant head baseball coach, and I put my name in the hat. And much like y'all did when we were at Redan, the kids rallied around me and said, look, we don't want a new leader. We don't want to change what we're doing. We want him to have the job. And, 50 applicants, and, I come down with the job. And I made sure that, Chuck had taught me well. I'd gone to a lot of meetings with him and how to organize a staff and how to get people. And so I began to organize my staff and grow people, get the right people around me, not be the know-it-all, but let coaches coach. And so you get to hire some very great people like Jerry Stewart.
Yes.
You hire Larry Massey, and you get to hire Mark Whitley, and Rick Creed was with us at Stone Mountain. He made a trip over there.
Right.
And he was a swimming coach, but he was also a great defensive secondary coach.
Right.
And so, we were able to put a really good staff together. And then some guys that actually played for me, Eric Godfrey, he came back to coach with me. Bill Stewart, I had Bill Stewart on my staff.
Bill Stewart.
He actually, I went over and did a study at Etowah. And the principal called me and said, come over and just kind of take us through what it takes to win and what we need. And so I did that. And he asked me if I wanted to come. And my son was just a freshman. And I said, no, but I've got a guy that's ready, Bill Stewart. And so they hired Bill. And then Bill goes over there and just does great. And doggone if they don't beat us in the playoffs. It was like, but Bill's a great coach. And then he left and went over to Alabama and then back to Georgia and then wound up at North. And he's doing a great job at North. But, it's been a great ride. I mean, all those years that people talk about, the winning at Parkview, we had the first state championship in 1995 against Southwest DeKalb.
Right.
Cozy Coleman, Quincy Carter, all those guys. And it's like, we had a real good group. Wow. Played at DeKalb Memorial Stadium, and I think it holds 17,000. I think there were about 23,000 there. They were hanging in the trees. They were 10 deep.
I was there. I was there.
We got the pictures. And, I remember like it was yesterday, we checked to a 2 tight end set, and the third tight end, Trent Sansbury, went in the game, looked at one side, looked at the other side, and said, well, I guess I'll just be a wingback. And we snapped the ball, and Brett Milliken scored. And they called it back. They didn't have us for illegal, just a substitution. They let the ball be snapped. And so, we got that touchdown call back, and we wound up getting beat, and we were just heartbroken. I mean, it was like a really good team. We're 14-0. Southwest DeKalb, Buck had a great team.
Yeah.
And so then, 96 goes by and we have a pretty good club, and 97 comes and we only have like 11 seniors. And we've
Yeah.
got a bunch of juniors and 10th graders. And, halfway through, if you remember, we were 3-2. We had lost 2 games. We lost to Cedar Shoals and we
Sure.
lost to somebody else. And it's like, well, our back's on the wall.
Right.
And there's a huge backstory that I probably don't have time to get into, but it concerned a guy named Jesse Smith who had a really rare form of cancer. His brother
Okay.
played for us. And the team rallied around him, and Jesse lost his life that year.
Okay.
And his funeral was at home plate, at Parkview. And,
Okay.
and Brett Butler was there, and, Hugh Buchanan was there, and Bobby Bowden was there. And they'd come from Florida, from Tallahassee.
Right.
And the whole team changed on that day in center field. And, I just remember, after that funeral, a lot of people saying, man, there's no telling what's going to happen to this team now, because we all went.
Yep.
And a lot of our kids came to know the Lord that day. And, and that was big.
Wow.
And they were known as the cardiac kids. We won in the last second, the last drive, the last interception, the last punt return. There's kids like Jeff Francoeur on that team.
Yeah.
We had some really good ones. And Joey Sturdivant, and those guys, they're just playmakers and just, want to do it. I remember so vividly, the things that we were able to do as we progressed along. And, everybody thinks, and I think this, when you win the state championship, you got 12 guys that are going to sign Division I college scholarships. It's just not true.
Yeah.
There's 2 or 3 guys. I mean, I think the most I ever had was 5. And
Wow.
that was in 2000.
Wow.
But you have a bunch of kids that are just really, really good high school football players that aren't going to play college football. They're just going to be high school football players. But man, they locked in and they were tough. And we came to play every week, and they were lunch pail kind of kids. They just punch your ticket and go to work, had a good time. They weren't a big rah-rah. They just knew they had to do the job on that run.
Right.
And so for 3 years, it was like, the press they kept going, well, you're 15-0, now you're 16-0, now you're 7. I said, no, we're 1-0. We're 1-0 again for the 17th week and the 18th week. And I kept that with the kids like that for a reason. I didn't want the pressure of, oh golly, we're 30-0. It's no, you're not 30-0. You're 1-0 again. And we played to be 1-0, and it lasted for 46 weeks. And it was awesome. And it was a great run of kids and a great group. And we beat some really good teams. And our kids they bonded together and played together and had kids a lot like you, Kevin. I mean, just hard nosed. I mean, you talk about the Hennigers at Redan,
Yes.
and Rusty Whaley and all those guys. We had
Mike Parrish.
Mike Parrish,
And Todd Nunnally.
Todd Nunnally, yeah. Mike still kids me about pinning him on the wrestling mat. And Mike, people like that, just exactly the same. And then you just keep moving along. And we played for it again in 2006, and we had a coach on my staff, on Robert's staff now. Todd Faulkner was our quarterback.
Okay.
And his younger brother Buster was on the 97 team, and so we come along, and we had just a little bit of a misfortune. We caught a ball and had a celebration penalty on an interception, and it pushed us out of field goal range, and we had to throw a ball and either throw it out of bounds or and punt it or throw it complete, and the ball got stripped out of his hands, and the guy went 60 yards with it. They beat us, and Todd still talks about it, but just one of those things that happens. But the wins and what you do for the kids and how much the kids get out of it, not just the kids going to college, Kevin. It's all the other kids, the kids that write you letters after many years later that they're successful. They've gone off in the business world. They've gone to college. They've done their deal, and they come back and they visit. That's what we do it for, and that's what I do it for, because it's just fun to do.
I often tell my players and even my parents, my players that go off to college and get a chance to still connect with those kids who become young men now. Oftentimes, and I shared it with some of our Raider family and teammates of what is my why? And I said I had a great example of success. I had a great example of men like yourself and the other coaches, Coach Claude Shankweiler, Coach Barber, you know, being able to Coach Mize, which was his favorite line was he called you little man.
You're
And
a
I
little man.
tell you what,
Right.
when he called you little man, I tell you what, I thought I was about 6'5", 285 pounds. He would look at you. And he had those movie star looks now, even though he had the bald head, but he would give you that look and he'd stare right through you. And he
Yeah.
said, "Hey, little man, I think you can do it." And it's funny because at that time I was playing nose guard
I
and
remember.
running back
Yeah, I
and
remember that.
he would have me hit gaps and I'm going to tell a little secret now for my opponents that face me now. I'm an odd front defense, and it's because of those days and those years. And fortunate to have a Atlanta Journal Constitution Player of the Year, Nathaniel Norwood, in
Yeah.
2012. Who
Right.
went on to have successful career at App State and subsequently other places I've been. But it was that nose guard position, and it was that little man thing that even though Norwood wasn't little, he was a great player, high motor. But those things embodied just the work ethic, and I think more importantly, the confidence that you all gave us back in those days. That our ability to do things, even when you were coaching wrestling, I mean, it was prevalent all throughout a great time under Dr. James Halford, who was our
Yeah.
principal, because he brought all of you people there. And then for you coaches to be there with us and teach us the way. And then even when you all, moved on, like yourself, and moved on to Parkview. And then the funny part, when I finished college, I get a chance to coach at my alma mater, and I'm with Steve Davenport, who's the head coach, and
Yeah.
I'm defensive coordinator. So guess who we have the luxury of facing in the first round of the state playoffs in the jungle?
Yeah.
It would be you and and your team, and that was the first playoff game of that year on the run that began the
That's right.
3-year run.
That's right.
And it was great to see you, even though I knew we had to compete against you. But I honestly felt like I was watching us from back in the days, the Raider days. It was just a new, improved version of it being just back on the field again. And I'm looking at myself as a young coach, going, "Oh my goodness, this is, we had a pretty good team." And of course, Steve Davenport, a heck of an offense coordinator. We had Brad Lester there. Excuse me,
Right.
Greg Lester, the
Greg
big brother,
Lester. Yeah.
and Brad played for you.
Yeah.
And Brad had to play against us that night, and he was a backup. And I'm going, man, we got. I think you had somebody named Dawkins, a running
Yeah.
back.
Sean Dawkins.
Yeah, Sean Dawkins. I know he's assistant coach somewhere in Division I football now. But it was amazing watching the transformation of the success of yesteryear, and then at that time in 2000 of the success you had, and it made me feel really good knowing that I was a part of something very good in the 80s, but to see it manifest years later, uh, those ingredients for success. And those are the things that I think about when I think about your legendary career. And, talking to Kevin Butler, we had great stories. Coach Barber talks about the foul. He said, when I get a chance to talk to you, mention the foul ball.
Oh, yeah. Foul ball. Yeah. Yeah. We were umpiring a game, and and it's like I told him to this day the ball hit the bat. And he looked at me, and did he go? And I said, did he go? Foul ball. And we had a big laugh about it. And it was that was fun times. But Kevin, it is people like yourself that you try to when you have kids that work as hard as y'all did at Redan, and you see how it's done, and it's just a duplication of success, and you have kids that buy into what you're doing. I think the biggest thing for me that has changed in the game is back when y'all played for us, and y'all played for Redan High School. You play for that R. You play for that jersey. And all the years that we were at Parkview, that Parkview, I mean, that was the play for Parkview. And as it went on, football has changed to the fact of everybody thinks they've got to get a scholarship. Everybody thinks that you owe them something, and it's like, guys, I only owe you the opportunity to try. And if you're good enough, colleges are going to take you. They're going to see you, and they're going to take you. And so much of it turns into the amount, Kevin, of transfers. that are going on right now. And I think that the head man at the Georgia High School Association is doing a great job, because
Yes.
he's really clamped down on some of this that's going on. But it's just, the kids now don't seem like they. It's like, look, you're playing for that school, you're playing for your community, and the ones of officially that are still winning and doing that, you see those people pour out, and
Right.
there's something special I feel like going on right here. I mean, North has had some good teams.
Yes.
Way back in the day when they were Double A, they've had some really good teams. They hadn't won in quite a long while. And I told Robert it's going to take a pretty good 5-year build out probably. We're starting to get a different kind of kid on the football field now. Kids that they take weight training willingly. They want to get stronger. They don't avoid it, and it's like those are the things, the intangibles that you have to do to win. Come to practice every day, come to work every day, hang your shingle up and say, yeah, I'm here to play.
Right.
And it's like, hey, you got to go where everybody else goes. If you want to be number one, you got to beat number one.
That's right.
And so it's not easy. The kids are learning how to compete and learning how to win. And that's the fun part is you see them mature. I start 4 juniors on the offensive line, only 1 senior. And so we're growing. We grew into, what we're doing now. They're just now starting to do. Yes, you've been coaching long enough, you understand that, an offensive line, it takes them a while to get their muscle, get locked into what they know the next guy beside them's doing, and where they can play harder together. And I see that happening now, and that's what's fun for me. The competition part of it is still. I mean, it gives you those butterflies, and I've had heart surgery, and everyone says, "Why are you still doing this? You've had heart surgery, you've had all this stuff." It's like, well, I think it'd be worse if I didn't.
It's what you do.
It's what I do. It's just what I do. So and it's fun. And it's like, well, somebody asked me the other day, "How long are you gonna do this?" I said, "As long as the good Lord let me. As long as my health stays good, I'm gonna keep on fighting as long as I can do a job, and I don't feel like I'm holding people back. I'm gonna keep working."
It's funny you mentioned that, Coach Flowe, because my players ask me, and I think at least I feel still young at it. I know I still, for some reason, genetically wise, I've been able to keep the baby face, so that kind of helps me out a little bit. But my players laugh at me because there's just some things. Hey, listen, I am what I am. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, I have the hardest time, and I got a confession to make when it's time to turn on the TV and watch ESPN and Sports Center. If one of my children move the remote and move the channel, I'm stuck, and I need to have an act of Congress to get the TV on my channels. And my wife laughs at me, and she finally says, "Honey, what you are is a football coach, and that's just the best way you're gonna be able to flip it." And I said, I got the old Popeye, the Sailor Man mentality. I am what I am.
That's right.
So why stop coaching? I'm here because I had a nucleus of coaches that helped me move forward. So I was never afraid to pass it on, and I'm still learning, even now at North Atlanta and being in different area of town and being around kids that, maybe going and playing collegiate football is not their whole deal. That way, now I got kids that love it. So many times kids, they follow the likes, who likes me on Twitter, who likes me on Instagram.
That's right.
And those were not the things that, when you all coached us, that wasn't our deal. Our deal was
Twitter and Instagram when we play.
Yeah, we would never survive in that stuff. That wasn't our deal. So you all had focus with us in a way that we were locked in. And it's tough because I need to hear from coaches such as yourself, on how to keep moving forward. I feel like you all should have your own clinic when all this stuff smoke clears on how to help coaches younger than me stay in the game and be able to make the adjustment to what's going on today, because it's very important, and making decisions about staff. And those are still things that I need to learn, because although I lay my hat on the defensive side of football, and we've been, that's what I do well. But still, to have a nucleus of coaches such as yourself Coach Stewart, Coach Mark Whitley, who I tell you, I met him when we went to University of Virginia to work a football camp
Right.
back in 2001.
Yeah. Yeah.
And man, that guy was just straight energy. I understood why you all had the weight room that you did. And how hard is it now for coaches to get good coaches like that? It's so hard, and everything, it's tough. So we need coaches such as yourself to come back to talk to coaches like me and guys younger than me to help us. Coach Prost mentioned something very profound, and because I asked him about a month and a half ago on the show, how do you put together your staff? And he told me, looked me right in my face and said, I'll tell you right now, if I had to have offensive and defensive coordinator, coach, those guys probably couldn't teach classes because of the workload I'm going to give them to help us be successful. And I'm going, well, I don't work for administrators like that. I'd probably get fired if I asked my principal to because we're educators first. But he said at the end of the day, and it was profound, he said at the end of the day, sometimes we get judged by the wins and losses, coaching high school football. Now, we can be the greatest math teacher. We can be the greatest English teacher. But, when it's all said and done, the target is on the back at 7:30 when toe meets leather. So we need people such as yourself to help us to move forward and really, Coach Flowe, to stay encouraged, because I agree with you wholeheartedly. Kids have changed, and it's all about the likes and the Twitters and how many offers you got.
Well,
And
Kevin, when you do get kids that do finally see the light, and they finally do grow up, and they finally, they lose the part of them that is all about them, and it becomes more about the team than about them. And they're still there,
okay,
and you have to cultivate that, because it's a we live in a society now where it's like, what can you give me? What can what can I get? And not what can I give? And, football is a sport that you have to give.
right,
And if you're not willing to give, you're not going to get anything.
amen,
And so you've got to do that. And, I see young coaches and I know I made it a point to do this when I got in the business. I wasn't going to look at a talent pool and go, okay, I'm going to run over here and I'm going to coach here until the talent dries up and I'm going to get me another job over here. We went and we Chuck and I, when Shank, and Shank did that, Shank got there and it's like, we're going to stay here and we're going to win.
right,
And then, he had an opportunity because he knew that he was going up the ladder in coaching and he wanted to have more experience, and so, he went to Walton, and then he left and got into the college ranks, and so when you take a group of men and you teach them how to orchestrate coaches, and I remember Jerry Stewart telling me, just like you said, profoundly, it's like I woke up after 10 years of Tucker being the head coach in the middle of the night going, what am I doing? I'm not only coaching the players, I'm coaching the coaches, because the coaches don't know what to do. And
right,
so you have to cultivate that along. And so as you start to build your staff, as a head coach, you always got a pod of people that you can go and you can get and you can pick from, that they can pick from,
right,
to keep your staff good. And, you excel in the fact that, like, Jerry had been a head coach for 10 years. And he didn't want to be a head coach again. Larry Massey was never a head coach. He didn't want to be a head coach. He wanted to coach a secondary. He wanted to be a defensive coordinator. Him and Jerry were a great pair. Eric, he played for me. He went off and played, came back and coached with me. And then, went out and got his first job at Loganville.
right,
Then when I got ready to retire, one of the first things I told the principal, I said, look, there's only one guy you can go get. You need to get Eric Godfrey back over here because he's Parkview. He's homegrown Parkview. And so Eric's been able to put a real good staff together, and they've had good success. And the program has stabilized. And, it's still a great bedroom community, and there's great people over there. And they're doing a great job. And, all around the state, I think that's happening. I think there's great talent everywhere, at just about any level you go to. And, you talk about young coaches and staying in the business, you've got to cut your teeth and you got to learn. And then it's like everybody asks me after one or two state championships, well, you going to, when are you going to the college market? Well, I'm not. I'm away from home enough. My wife, doesn't know who I am now. And I was fortunate that my kids went to the primary school and the middle school right next to Parkview. So I saw them every day. And, and then, that was a great thing. But you mentioned your wife and the COVID, and I went through the same thing. And then you get you get newlyweds. And one of the things I like to do now is when, we had two guys just got married on our staff. And I said, if you sat down and talked to your wife about what you're really doing, you're going to be a football coach. And so you're going to leave at 6 o'clock in the morning. And she might be a school teacher. She might work in the workforce, but when she gets home, you're not going to be home. And she's going to be there all by herself. And it's going to be like, I remember when I got married, when Penny and I got married, and we got back from our honeymoon, and we started out to our house in Snellville. She said, where are we going? I said, well, we built this house out in Snellville right before we got married. We're going to that house. She said, oh, I'm not going to that house. There's nobody else in that neighborhood. It's like, well, where else is there to go? And then the realization comes in, even though I told her, you understand that you're a teacher and I'm a teacher, but I'm coaching and you've been around me now. And you know that I'm going to coach.
Right.
Didn't understand still the amount of hours it took. And so you leave at 6 o'clock and you get home at 9:30 or 10 o'clock at night, and it goes on the next day, and they're there all by themselves. And it's like the COVID deal, it teaches you, it's like, oh, well, I see how this is. They're here. They've got a whole nother thing they're doing to keep from just being bored with them because you're not there. And she's been great. And I know your wife's been great. They support you in what you do.
Right.
But she's been at every game. She's not missed a game. And so, hats off to our wives, because our wives make us better men.
Yes.
In everything we do. I know that Penny is good friends with Kevin's wife.
Right.
They were at Georgia together. So it is a unique opportunity. This business is tough. It's like you said, it is no matter what you say, it's results driven, it's performance driven. And yeah, you can be a great teacher, but if you're, especially like myself, if you're in a PE spot and you don't deliver, then PE spots are like gold.
Yes.
And so you can't be in, you just don't get to keep that job. Math teacher could probably not coach, they still keep his job as a math teacher. But, we try to, what we try to do when we first got here, this is what the way it was, but it's like we have to get people in the building that are coaching our kids. Lay coaches are great. We need them. I was a lay coach, and when I started, it was important, but I knew that to have the overall success that we need to have, I had to have coaches in the building talking and being around our kids every day. And that's the thing that I would give to all the young coaches that get in the business is when you get up and you get a chance to be a coordinator, you get a chance to be a head coach, surround yourself with good people, that are good teachers, because you're not going to hire, if you hire a coach that can't teach, it won't last.
Right.
You have to hire a good educator, that's a good communicator, because those guys make the best teachers. Good coaches make great teachers, and vice versa. But when you take your group to the guy that's going to hire them, your principal, they better be able to do their job in the classroom. And that's the first thing that I learned. They have to be classroom worthy. And then you go on the field and you do your stuff on the field, and it carries on. And for you and what you've done, and you went up and you tested the waters at the head level. And it's like myself, people ask me all the time, it's like, well, how are you going to do this? You were a head coach for 23 years. How are you going to go back just being an assistant? Well, you finally, I'll be honest, completely transparent, you finally get tired. You get tired of this. You don't ever get tired of the game.
Right.
You get tired of going to booster club meetings. At Redan, back in the day, probably this figure wasn't out there because we didn't have individual stadiums. We played at 3 stadiums in DeKalb County, or 4 stadiums, excuse me. But when you're having to raise $500,000 every year to budget your program, to build facilities that you don't have, that the county's not building, and you're a small-time businessman, you're a full-time coach, and you're gone all the time, it's like, to be in college, there's no way I'd be a college coach. I told Buster Faulkner, I couldn't do what you did. I couldn't go and coach here, and then he constantly has moved up the ladder, and he's finally at Georgia. He's at home. That's where he wants to be.
Right.
But he's an analyst, and he would probably be making a whole lot more as a head coach. somewhere else, but that's his niche. That's what he wants to do.
Right.
And that part of it just never appealed to me. I was gone enough as is. And when I see coaches that are on the road back before all this pandemic came, Kevin, that
Right.
I haven't been home in 6 weeks. I've been
Right.
on the road. I've got Georgia, I got Florida, Alabama, Tennessee. I got all these places I got to go. It's like, golly, B, I just don't know how you do it. Hats off to them, because to do that and still coach on the field and get all the work they got done, like you said, there's a lot. And I was fortunate that, as I was coming along at Parkview, they did lighten our teaching load a little bit. We didn't have 6 classes. Dr. Hoffer didn't make Chuck and I. He didn't make Coach Shankweiler teach 6 classes. I mean, he knew we needed time to coach the football team. And so, you have to have the right administration in order to do that. Like you said, if you don't, it's like, no, I'd never be able to do what you did, Coach Prost. I can't just coach football, because I got to teach classes, because that's administration in the bin.
Right.
But now to be an assistant coach, it's like, well, how do you do it? It's like, I'm an assistant coach. I'll attach my star to his wagon, and I'm helping him pull.
That's right.
And I'm not the boss anymore. I get to bounce things off of him. But it's his football team. It's Coach Kraft's football team. And he asked me things. I coach the offensive line. I coach 2 of the special teams. And it's like, that's my job, and I enjoy it. I don't have to go to Booster Club meetings. I don't have to raise $500,000. I enjoy seeing parents. I really do enjoy seeing parents. There's a lot of coaches that hate talking to parents. I don't. I enjoy talking to parents. And so, that's the part of it that you get that point where it's like, and I remember Charlie Jordan telling me this. I was sitting watching a game at Shiloh, and he looked at me and he said, "You look terrible."
Wow.
He said, "Looks like you're about burned out." I said, "Well, I'm frazzled." He said, "Well, you'll know." And I asked Dave Hunter the same question. He said, "You'll know when it's time." And I just reached that time where I went, this is it. I've had enough. And conversely, when I retired, and it's like, I'm not going to be a head coach anymore, I realized there's this huge void. What am I going to do with all this time? And it's like, well, you'd be foolish not to coach because you still enjoy it.
Right.
You just don't want to do all the other things that a head coach has to do. And so now I really like it because I've been able to take stuff off of Coach Kraft.
That's
I do all the eligibility, and I do all those things. I do all the physicals. He gives a lot of people jobs to do where he doesn't have to do it himself, and he trusts you to do it because you've been a head coach and he knows that what has to be done. That's like having a kid on the field that he got hurt, he didn't have a physical. Well, I like my job. I like my job. I don't want to get fired, so. And I'm going to make sure all that stuff gets done. He trusts me to do that kind of stuff, and a lot of the coaches too.
Right. Well, I tell you what, Coach Flowe, I'm glad that you're still involved. We need you to stick around as long as you feel like it. Thank you for being a part of my life. Thank you for being a part of examples of success in our nurturing years in those 80s. And early 80s, and thank you for what you've done at Parkview High School. And I know the folks in North Forsyth definitely appreciate, especially head coach, appreciate what you're doing. I'm glad that we share something in common.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, I just want to say thank you. Thank you for coming on the show. Thank you for taking some time to be with us this evening. I know
Kevin,
practice.
You know that it's people like you that make us do our job, because I see where you were as a player and I see where you are now. You're in the profession, and then you got this show that's becoming so popular, and you're interviewing different coaches and you're getting the word out, and it's so inspiring, to watch the shows and listen. And it's like, hats off to you. You're one of my favorites of all time. You always have been. And it's just one of those guys that you look back and go, man, if I could just clone about 12 of him every year, we'd win every game.
But thank you so much. And sports fans, just want you to know, if you enjoyed the show, please click share and click and share to others. Thank you so much, Coach Flowe, for joining us tonight. You and I are going to have many more conversations later on down the road off air, and maybe hopefully you'll come back sometime after the season's over with, and we can have a whole nother conversation about the wonderful part of recruiting. So hopefully I can get you to come back.
We'd love to. Thanks for having me, Kevin. Been a
Thank
pleasure.
you.
Real pleasure.
Thank you so much. Thank you. So that's it, sports fans. We are 100 yards of football sports talk. Thank you for enjoying this time as we venture down talking about Parkview football with the legendary Coach Cecil Flowe from the Parkview Panthers. Thank you so much.
Thank
Good
you,
night.
Kevin.